Banned and forgotten. Earth had always been a planet on the edge of the galaxy, just another speck of dust in a vast and ancient universe. For centuries, humanity had looked up at the stars, dreaming of one day becoming part of the greater galactic community. But that dream was shattered in an instant. The Galactic Council, a powerful organization made up of the most advanced species in the galaxy, had made a decision that would change everything for Earth. In a unanimous vote, they declared Earth a danger to galactic peace. It wasn't because humans had waged wars or attacked other species. It was because of their potential. Humanity's rapid technological advancements and their unpredictability were seen as a threat. They were too new, too chaotic, and far too dangerous to be allowed into the fold of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. And so, the Council issued an ultimatum. Earth would be banned from the galactic community. All communication, trade, and alliances with other planets were severed. Humans were to be left to their own devices, isolated from the rest of the galaxy. No one would come to their aid. No one would help them grow. They were to be forgotten, their advancements halted before they could pose any real danger. The news hit Earth like a shockwave. At first, there was disbelief. People couldn't comprehend how the galaxy could just turn its back on them. They had been working so hard, reaching for the stars, hoping to join the greater galactic family. They had made significant progress in space exploration, and their technology was beginning to rival that of other species. Earth had earned the respect of many, even if the Galactic Council had never fully accepted them. But now, all of that seemed meaningless. The Council had cast them aside, and there was nothing anyone could do to change it. Dr. Claire Morgan, one of Earth's leading scientists, watched the announcement on a holographic screen in her lab. She had spent years working to understand alien technologies, to make contact with other species, and to build Earth's place in the galaxy. But all of that had come crashing down. The message from the Council was clear. Earth is no longer welcome in the stars. She clenched her fists, frustration rising within her. She couldn't believe it. How could they just cast aside an entire species? How could they turn their backs on everything Earth had worked for? In the halls of government, Earth's leaders were scrambling. The president had called an emergency meeting with military commanders, scientists, and diplomats. The mood was grim. No one had expected this. The decision from the Galactic Council was final, and there was no going back. Earth was alone. Admiral Jonathan Carter, the commander of Earth's military forces, stood in front of a large map of the galaxy. His face was grim, his eyes narrowed with determination. "We've been abandoned. The Council has made it clear. We are not welcome in the galaxy. But that doesn't mean we're finished. We're not going to roll over and let them dictate our future. We will fight for our place among the stars." There was a silence in the room. The leaders around him looked at each other, unsure of what to say. They had always hoped that Earth would one day be part of the greater galactic community, but now it seemed like that dream was over. They were isolated, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations had decided they didn't want humanity around. But Admiral Carter's words sparked something in everyone. It was a fire that had been smoldering for years, a belief that humanity could achieve greatness no matter the odds. They might be banned, they might be forgotten, but they were not going to give up. Not without a fight. In the weeks that followed, Earth began to react. The first priority was survival. Earth's military forces began working tirelessly to strengthen their defenses. They knew the Council had powerful fleets, and now that Earth was isolated, they had no allies to turn to. But Earth had something the Council didn't: ingenuity. Humanity had always been able to adapt, to create, and to overcome. If they couldn't rely on the Council for help, they would rely on their own skills. Dr. Morgan was among the first to offer a solution. She had been working on a new form of propulsion, one that could allow humanity to travel faster than any ship in the galaxy. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. With the help of her team, she began to build the prototype. They worked day and night, driven by the belief that humanity could rise above the challenges that had been thrown at them. Meanwhile, in Earth's military command, Admiral Carter was preparing for the worst. There was no question in his mind that the Council would retaliate. They had already begun to send ships into Earth's territory, no longer concerned with diplomatic talks. It was only a matter of time before the Council decided that the threat Earth posed had to be dealt with once and for all. But Earth was ready. The time for survival was over. Now it was time to prove that humanity could not be ignored. They would show the galaxy that being banned and forgotten was not the end of their story. They would forge their own path, build their own empire, and one day, the galaxy would remember their name. As the days passed, the sense of urgency in Earth's military and scientific communities grew. The work was relentless, but so was their determination. Earth had been cast out, left to fend for itself. But in the hearts of humanity, the fire had only just begun to burn. They were no longer going to wait for the galaxy to acknowledge them. They would rise up, stronger than ever, and they would make the galaxy understand one simple truth: humanity was not to be forgotten. And so, Earth's fate was sealed. They had been banned, isolated, and abandoned. But this was not the end. This was just the beginning. The universe would soon learn that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The days following Earth's banishment from the Galactic Council were filled with tension and uncertainty. People across the planet were still in shock, unable to fully grasp what had just happened. But amidst the disbelief, a quiet determination began to rise. Earth had been abandoned, left to survive on its own in a universe full of advanced civilizations. The message from the Galactic Council had been loud and clear: Earth was not welcome. Yet, this rejection sparked something within humanity, an unyielding resolve to not just survive, but to thrive. Dr. Claire Morgan worked tirelessly in her lab, focused on her research to develop a new propulsion system that could outpace anything the galaxy had seen before. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. If Earth was going to have any hope of fighting back against the galaxy's powerful forces, it needed to have an edge. The propulsion system would give Earth the means to travel faster than ever, potentially allowing them to strike first or even escape if things went south. But the task was monumental. She knew that time was against them. The Council's ships were already moving closer to Earth's outer systems, possibly preparing for a strike. The Council didn't tolerate defiance, and they would certainly not allow Earth to get away with this. While Dr. Morgan worked on the propulsion system, Admiral Jonathan Carter was assembling Earth's defenses. He had a deep understanding of the military's capabilities, and he knew that Earth was still far behind the galactic powers in terms of advanced weapons and technology. But one thing Earth had in abundance was ingenuity. They might not have the biggest fleets or the most powerful weapons, but they had the will to win. They had always been able to overcome the odds through sheer creativity and determination. It wasn't long before Carter had begun assembling a fleet of his own, drawing on the best minds in military strategy and engineering to design ships that could stand up to the Council's overwhelming forces. The work was exhausting, but there was no other choice. Earth was at a crossroads. Either it would crumble under the weight of the galaxy's power, or it would rise to prove that it belonged among the stars. The people of Earth knew that they had been dealt a hard blow, but they also knew that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. As Earth's military forces began preparing for the worst, there was a growing sense of unity across the planet. The various nations, once divided by borders and ideologies, now stood together. The threat from the Galactic Council had forced humanity to set aside their differences and focus on a common goal: survival. This sense of unity was something Earth had never experienced before. The human spirit, when faced with overwhelming odds, had a way of coming together. Every corner of the planet was working towards the same purpose. The scientific community, led by Dr. Morgan, was focused on building the technology that would give Earth an edge over the galaxy. The propulsion system, though still in its early stages, was progressing rapidly. Dr. Morgan's team had managed to create a small prototype capable of faster-than-light travel. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was proof that humanity could innovate when it needed to. The scientific minds of Earth were putting everything they had into making this new technology a reality. The belief that Earth could rise from the ashes of its banishment fueled their work. In the military, Admiral Carter began assembling his fleet. The ships were smaller than those of the Council, but they were designed with one purpose in mind: to be fast, agile, and deadly. The fleet would be able to hit hard and disappear before the enemy could retaliate. It was a strategy that Earth had always excelled at, striking from unexpected angles, using creativity and speed to overwhelm larger, more powerful forces. The fleet was coming together piece by piece, each ship a testament to humanity's resilience. As Earth's preparations continued, the Council's response was swift. Though they had banned Earth from the galactic community, they couldn't simply let humanity go unchecked. They began sending smaller ships into Earth's territory, likely scouting for any signs of rebellion or resistance. The ships were not there to negotiate. They were there to observe, to ensure that Earth did not pose a threat. But Earth was not helpless. The new fleet, though small, was already on high alert. They knew that the time to strike would come soon, and they had to be ready. Meanwhile, on the political front, the leaders of Earth faced a difficult decision. The Council had made it clear that Earth was no longer welcome, but that didn't mean they had to give up. Some suggested trying to negotiate with other civilizations, to forge new alliances, but many felt that Earth could never truly trust any species in the galaxy again. The decision was made. Earth would have to stand on its own. No more waiting for help. No more asking for permission. The time had come for humanity to carve out its own place in the galaxy, even if it meant fighting every step of the way. The sense of urgency was palpable across Earth. The people understood that this wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that humanity could never be erased. The more they were pushed, the more they fought back. The Galactic Council had made a mistake. They thought humanity would crumble, but instead, they had created a spark. And in that spark was the potential for something far greater than the Council could ever imagine. Humanity was ready to show the galaxy that they had been underestimated, that they were not to be ignored, and that they were going to build an empire of their own. As the days turned into weeks and then months, Earth's preparations continued. The fleet grew stronger, the technology more advanced. The work was far from over, but the foundation had been laid, and Earth was no longer just a planet on the edge of the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. Soon, the universe would see that humanity had not been forgotten. They were about to remind everyone why they deserved a place among the stars. The fight for Earth's future was just beginning, and the galaxy was about to find out just how resilient humanity could be when pushed to the edge. The Galactic Council had made their decision, but humanity was not finished. In fact, they were just getting started. The weeks passed, and Earth's plans to rise from the ashes of its banishment continued to take shape. The people of Earth were no longer the same. They were a united force, each citizen contributing in some way to the immense task of building a new empire. The military was now preparing for what was to come. Each new ship added to the growing fleet a symbol of Earth's resilience. The fleet, although small compared to the Council's, was nimble and powerful, designed for speed and precision. It was a fleet built on the principle of unpredictability, a force that could strike without warning and disappear before the enemy could even respond. Admiral Jonathan Carter stood before the newly commissioned fleet, a look of determination on his face. He knew what this meant. Earth was no longer looking for acceptance from the Galactic Council. They weren't begging for a seat at the table. They were claiming their place. The fleet now included advanced fighters, capable of hyperspace travel, and larger battleships that could launch devastating strikes from long range. The propulsion technology that Dr. Claire Morgan and her team had developed was now in full operation, allowing Earth's fleet to move faster than ever before. The technology had the potential to change everything. No longer would Earth be at the mercy of the Galactic Council's superior forces. They could fight back, and they could win. The first test came sooner than anyone expected. The Council, unaware of the extent to which Earth had prepared, sent a small scouting party into Earth's outer defense perimeter. It was a routine mission to monitor Earth's movements, but the Council underestimated the readiness of humanity. The fleet was more than prepared for such an intrusion. The attack was swift, and the Council ships never had a chance to respond. Earth's newly developed weapons, precise and devastating, struck with accuracy, disabling the enemy vessels before they could even fire back. It was a perfect demonstration of the power Earth had harnessed in such a short time. Dr. Claire Morgan watched the results of the battle from her lab, her face illuminated by the screens displaying footage of the skirmish. Her heart raced as the battle unfolded, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had done it. Earth had done it. The weapons, the propulsion systems, and the strategy, all of it had worked. But as the battle came to an end, she knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not take this lightly. They would respond. They had to. Meanwhile, on the political front, Earth's leaders were faced with a crucial decision. They had proven that they were not weak, that they could defend themselves and fight back. But what came next? Some leaders argued that Earth should continue to build its strength, waiting for the right moment to strike at the heart of the Galactic Council. Others, however, believed that it was time to send a message to the galaxy, a message that Earth would not be subjugated any longer. The Council had banished them, and now they had a choice. Either they could destroy Earth completely, or they could face the consequences of their actions. The Council, still reeling from the unexpected defeat of their scouting party, debated their next move. They had underestimated Earth, thinking that humanity was a primitive species, easy to control. They had seen Earth as nothing more than a fragile planet, weak and easily manipulated. But the events of the past few weeks had shown them something different. Earth was not weak. It was strong, and that strength was growing every day. On Earth, a sense of urgency began to take hold. The fight for survival had evolved into something far greater. It was no longer just about defending their planet from the Council. It was about reclaiming their place in the galaxy. The new empire that humanity was building had to be prepared for whatever the Council might throw at them. Every day, new ships were being constructed, and the technology was advancing faster than anyone could have predicted. What started as a desperate need for survival had now transformed into a massive undertaking. A new empire was rising, and it was not going to stop until it had claimed its rightful place. Admiral Carter and his fleet knew that the next step was crucial. The Council would not let this defeat slide. They would send reinforcements, larger fleets, and perhaps even more powerful weapons. But Earth was prepared. Their fleet was fast, deadly, and constantly evolving. They were no longer trying to match the Council's power. They were creating their own. The more the Council underestimated them, the stronger they became. As the days turned into weeks, Earth continued to build its power. More ships, more weapons, and more alliances were forged. The galaxy was watching, and the message was clear. Earth was no longer a backwater planet to be ignored. They had shown their strength, and the universe had taken notice. The question now was not whether Earth could survive. It was whether the Galactic Council could stand against them. In the midst of this rapid advancement, the leaders of Earth began to formulate a plan. They knew that the time to strike was fast approaching. They had built their empire in the shadows, and now it was time to make their presence known. But they would not rush in blindly. The first move had to be calculated, precise. They had to strike when the Council was vulnerable, when they least expected it. The world was on the brink of something monumental. Earth's new empire was no longer a dream. It was a reality. The fight for the future of humanity was far from over, but the strength they had shown in such a short time had made it clear. Earth was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. And soon, the galaxy would learn that underestimating humanity was a mistake they would never live to regret. The tension in the Galactic Council was palpable. The news of Earth's victory over the scouting party had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For centuries, the Council had viewed Earth as a backwater planet, too primitive and insignificant to pose any real threat. But now, humanity had proven them wrong. The Galactic Council's leaders were scrambling, reassessing their strategies, and wondering how they could have missed the rise of such a powerful force. The Earth's leadership knew that this was just the beginning. The Council would retaliate. The real test was still ahead. But Earth was not afraid. They had learned from their past mistakes, and they had the advantage of surprise. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay the price for their arrogance. On Earth, Admiral Jonathan Carter stood in front of the newly constructed fleet, his face a mask of determination. The fleet had grown larger, more advanced, and more lethal. The ships had been outfitted with the latest technology, and the pilots were ready. The first real strike against the Council was fast approaching, and Carter was preparing his forces for the battle that would change everything. The fleets of Earth were not as large as the Council's, but they were far more flexible and agile. The Council's ships were designed for brute force, relying on sheer firepower and size to overwhelm their enemies. But Earth's ships were smaller, faster, and more maneuverable. They had been built to strike swiftly, to take advantage of the element of surprise. This was Earth's strength. The Council might have the numbers, but Earth had the speed and the unpredictability to overcome them. The mission was clear. They were going to send a message to the Council and to the entire galaxy. Earth had been banished, forgotten, and written off. Now, they were taking their place among the stars. The time for diplomacy had passed. It was time to take action. Dr. Claire Morgan, the brilliant scientist behind Earth's new weapons, was at the heart of the preparations. She stood in the control room, watching the data stream across the monitors. Her team had been working around the clock to develop the technology that would give Earth an edge in the coming battle. The propulsion systems, weapons, and shields were all top of the line, and they had been tested to perfection. But even with all their preparation, Claire knew that the real challenge lay ahead. The Council would not take this lying down. As Earth's fleet prepared for their first large-scale offensive, the Council's ships began to move. The Council had already dispatched reinforcements, vast fleets of warships designed to crush any resistance. Their ships were massive, built to intimidate, and they were coming straight for Earth. The Council's commanders were confident. They believed that Earth's recent victory was a fluke, an isolated incident. They would teach humanity a lesson they would never forget. But what the Council didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this moment for years. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology had been crafted with the single goal of surviving and thriving in the harshest conditions of space warfare. Humanity had no intention of backing down. As the Earth fleet made its way toward the outer rim of the solar system, the tension in the control room was unbearable. Every officer, every scientist, every soldier knew that this battle would determine the fate of Earth. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about taking a stand. Humanity's place in the galaxy was at stake. The first wave of Council ships appeared on the horizon. The massive ships, each one several times larger than Earth's own vessels, were a formidable sight. The Council's fleet had the numbers, and they were well armed. But Earth had the advantage of speed and surprise. The moment the Council ships came within range, Earth's fleet struck. The battle was intense, unlike anything Earth had ever faced before. The Council ships fired their heavy weapons, trying to crush Earth's fleet with sheer firepower. But Earth's ships were quick and nimble, evading the barrage of energy blasts and returning fire with deadly precision. The new weapons, powered by the advanced propulsion technology, tore through the Council ships with surgical accuracy. Each shot was calculated, aimed at critical points that would cripple the enemy's ships before they even had a chance to retaliate. The Council's ships were bigger, but they were slow and cumbersome. They couldn't keep up with Earth's fleet, which darted in and out of the fray, striking from unexpected angles. The Council had always relied on their superior firepower, But now they were facing a force that could outmaneuver them at every turn. The battle raged on for hours, with Earth's fleet picking off Council ships one by one. The Galactic Council commanders were stunned. They had never imagined that Earth, a planet they had banished, could pose such a threat. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. On Earth, the mood was tense but hopeful. The people had watched in awe as their fleet fought back, taking down the might of the Council's forces. It was clear that humanity had come a long way since their banishment. They had transformed from a vulnerable species into a formidable force. Earth's new empire was no longer a dream. It was a reality. And the galaxy was starting to take notice. But the battle was far from over. The Council would not give up so easily. Earth had made a bold statement, but the true test was yet to come. The battle had only just begun, and both sides knew that the stakes were higher than ever. Earth had shown the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated, but now it had to prove that it could stand its ground and claim its place among the stars. The tension was palpable, and the future of Earth hung in the balance. The first major victory had been won, but the war was far from over. The galaxy would never be the same again. Earth was rising, and nothing could stop it now. The war had escalated, and the galaxy was on edge. Earth's forces had struck a decisive blow against the Galactic Council, and the consequences of that victory were beginning to unfold in ways the universe could hardly comprehend. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of unity and order across the stars, was now facing an uprising from the very species it had cast aside. As the Earth fleet continued to dominate the battlefield, the Council found itself scrambling to adapt. The human spirit, once dismissed as insignificant, had proven to be the ultimate weapon. Every strategy the Council had used in the past, relying on overwhelming numbers and brute strength, was failing in the face of Earth's agility, ingenuity, and determination. Humanity's new empire was not just built on technology. It was built on resolve, creativity, and an unwavering drive to survive. And the Council had underestimated all of it. But the war was not over. The Council, now desperate to regain control, had rallied its remaining forces. Massive reinforcements were being sent to the outer reaches of the galaxy to confront the humans and crush the fledgling Earth Empire once and for all. Earth's victory had been a shock, but the Council believed that they could still win. They had the numbers, the resources, and the political might. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, and they were not going to let some upstart planet change that. On Earth, Admiral Jonathan Carter stood at the helm of the flagship, gazing out at the stars. His face was a mixture of confidence and caution. The first wave had been successful, but now the real challenge lay ahead. The fleet had pushed the Council back, but they had not broken them. Now, the next phase of the battle would determine the fate of humanity's new empire. The fleet had gathered near the edge of the solar system, ready to face the incoming Council forces. The ships were armed to the teeth, the crews were ready, and the weapons systems were primed. But Carter knew that there was no room for complacency. They had won the first round, but the war was far from over. The next battle would be even more difficult, and failure was not an option. The Council's reinforcements arrived in force. Ships of unimaginable size and power, carrying fleets of warships and soldiers, appeared on the horizon. The Earth fleet, smaller and more agile, immediately engaged the enemy. The clash between the two forces was cataclysmic. Energy blasts filled the void of space, creating a symphony of destruction as the two sides collided in a battle for the future of the galaxy. Admiral Carter barked orders as the Earth ships maneuvered, darting in and out of the battle with pinpoint precision. Earth's ships were fast, their agility the key to their success. The larger Council ships, though powerful, were too slow to keep up. The humans had perfected their tactics. Strike quickly, avoid the heavy fire, and take down critical systems with surgical precision. The Council was learning just how dangerous Earth could be. Dr. Claire Morgan stood in the control room, watching the battle unfold. The technology she and her team had developed was being put to the ultimate test. The new weapons, based on cutting-edge energy propulsion systems, were far more advanced than anything the Council had seen. Earth's ships had shields that adapted in real time to incoming attacks, and weapons that could tear through the strongest defenses. Every shot was calculated, every movement purposeful. Earth's fleet was a machine of war, driven by the will to survive and thrive. But even with all their technological advancements, the humans knew they couldn't afford to underestimate the Council. The stakes had never been higher. Earth's fleet was holding their ground, but the Council was not backing down. They had sent their best warriors, their most powerful ships, and they would stop at nothing to crush humanity's new empire. As the battle raged on, Carter's thoughts were with his crew. They had come a long way since the early days of Earth's struggle. What had once been a small, scrappy fleet of underdog ships was now a force to be reckoned with. And it wasn't just the ships and weapons that made them strong. It was the people. Every soldier, every pilot, every scientist had come together to create something greater than themselves. They had faced unimaginable odds, and they had succeeded. But now, they had to face the Council's full might, and it was uncertain whether they would survive. The human spirit, however, was unyielding. Carter knew that the fate of humanity rested on this battle. If they could defeat the Council, if they could hold their ground, they would not just survive, they would rise. They would become the new power in the galaxy. The Council had taken everything from them, their dignity, their freedom, and their place in the stars. But now, Earth was taking it all back. But the war was not over. The Council, now desperate to regain control, had rallied its remaining forces. Massive reinforcements were being sent to the outer reaches of the galaxy to confront the humans and crush the fledgling Earth Empire once and for all. Earth's victory had been a shock, but the Council believed that they could still win. They had the numbers, the resources, and the political might. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, and they were not going to let some upstart planet change that. On Earth, Admiral Jonathan Carter stood at the helm of the flagship, gazing out at the stars. His face was a mixture of confidence and caution. The first wave had been successful, but now the real challenge lay ahead. The fleet had pushed the Council back, but they had not broken them. Now, the next phase of the battle would determine the fate of humanity's new empire. The fleet had gathered near the edge of the solar system, ready to face the incoming Council forces. The ships were armed to the teeth, the crews were ready, and the weapon systems were primed. But Carter knew that there was no room for complacency. They had won the first round, but the war was far from over. The next battle would be even more difficult, and failure was not an option. The Council's reinforcements arrived in force. Ships of unimaginable size and power, carrying fleets of warships and soldiers, appeared on the horizon. The Earth fleet, smaller and more agile, immediately engaged the enemy. The clash between the two forces was cataclysmic. Energy blasts filled the void of space, creating a symphony of destruction as the two sides collided in a battle for the future of the galaxy. Admiral Carter barked orders as the Earth ships maneuvered, darting in and out of the battle with pinpoint precision. Earth's ships were fast, their agility the key to their success. The larger Council ships, though powerful, were too slow to keep up. The humans had perfected their tactics. Strike quickly, avoid the heavy fire, and take down critical systems with surgical precision. The Council was learning just how dangerous Earth could be. Dr. Claire Morgan stood in the control room, watching the battle unfold. The technology she and her team had developed was being put to the ultimate test. The new weapons, based on cutting-edge energy propulsion systems, were far more advanced than anything the Council had seen. Earth's ships had shields that adapted in real time to incoming attacks, and weapons that could tear through the strongest defenses. Every shot was calculated, every movement purposeful. Earth's fleet was a machine of war, driven by the will to survive and thrive. But even with all their technological advancements, the humans knew they couldn't afford to underestimate the Council. The stakes had never been higher. Earth's fleet was holding their ground, but the Council was not backing down. They had sent their best warriors, their most powerful ships, and they would stop at nothing to crush humanity's new empire. As the battle raged on, Carter's thoughts were with his crew. They had come a long way since the early days of Earth's struggle. What had once been a small, scrappy fleet of underdog ships was now a force to be reckoned with. And it wasn't just the ships and weapons that made them strong. It was the people. Every soldier, every pilot, every scientist had come together to create something greater than themselves. They had faced unimaginable odds, and they had succeeded. But now, they had to face the Council's full might, and it was uncertain whether they would survive. The human spirit, however, was unyielding. Carter knew that the fate of humanity rested on this battle. If they could defeat the Council, if they could hold their ground, they would not just survive, they would rise. They would become the new power in the galaxy. The Council had taken everything from them, their dignity, their freedom, and their place in the stars. But now, Earth was taking it all back. Hours turned into days, and the battle showed no sign of slowing down. The Earth fleet had taken heavy losses, but they had dealt even greater damage to the Council. Ship after ship fell, and the Council commanders grew more desperate. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. The once proud fleets of the Council were in disarray, their ships crippled and scattered across the battlefield. Then something unexpected happened. The Council's leaders, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempted to negotiate. They reached out to Admiral Carter, offering peace talks in exchange for a ceasefire. They pleaded for their lives, admitting that they had been wrong to banish Earth. But Carter knew that this was not the time for negotiations. The Council had made their choice when they decided to cast Earth aside. Now Earth had to make its own decision, whether to accept the past and forgive, or to carve out its own future. The choice was clear. Carter sent a response to the Council. Humanity doesn't forgive. We take what's ours. With that, the battle raged on. The Council's last-ditch effort to halt the war had failed, and the Earth fleet surged forward with unstoppable force. The new empire was on the brink of being born, and nothing could stand in its way.